Ippoliti from the university. The title for his talk is Heuristic Logic, the Kernel.
So thank you, Carlo. Honored to be introduced by you on this subject. So I will break down my paper into four sections. A brief introduction, and I will go then to describe heuristic logic, and I will then try to give an outline of some heuristic rules, and in the end I will make some final remarks. So, first of all, I will try to place my work, and the advancement of knowledge is one of the engine and the aim of theory construction. We know also from Margaret this morning that there are several approaches to theory construction: the semantic, the syntactic, the pragmatic, and the problem-solving approach. And in my paper, I will try to focus on one approach. It's the problem-solving approach, that in a sense goes back to Aristotle when he worked the Problemata, according to which knowledge progresses by solving problems. And so solving problems is the main engine to build theories. Of course, there are several quite different traditions into the problem-solving approach. We have the Poincaré-Simon line, and we have the Popper-Rodan line. We have also, obviously, the Lakatos traditions. And today, maybe we can put Carlo behind Lakatos, and Nico, I don't know about Tom. It's not here, I'm sorry. Maybe it's in the between Lakatos and the tradition that goes back to Popper and Rodan. And maybe, I don't know also about you, Donald. Maybe you are with Tom.
Carlo.
You have to think about it. Okay, the differences are quite simple. So the Poincaré-Simon approach to problem solving, in essence, develops theory of problems, very famous theory, and also tries to conjecture a mechanization of discovery with the software Bacon. But this tradition does not produce a real methodology of discovery. And if you think about it, Simon heuristics are basically hill climbing, difference reductions, and means and analysis, and the use of mathematics. The other tradition is the Popper-Rodan tradition. Agrees that knowledge advances by solving problem, but they deny that there is a thing like a methodology of discovery. There is no such thing as a methodology of discovery, and discovery is a matter of psychology. And then we have the third line, and I'm sympathetic with this line, as you will see. And this line maintains that we can trace back to Lakatos, maintains that we have a methodology for discovery, and Lakatos gives some examples, the positive and negative heuristics. Maybe you remember it, and the positive heuristics are the ones that give you insight into the path to follow when you're searching for a solution or a problem. The negative ones are the ones that tells you what path not to follow in order to search a solution. Okay, so I will try to develop this line. So that's where I am. And this line seems to argue that it's possible something like heuristic logic. And I will try to define what I mean by heuristic logic. So first of all, by heuristic logic, broadly speaking, we can say that it's a rational procedure that guides us, through the discovery of new knowledge. First of all, I need to define the notion and the terms of heuristics, and I will use a very famous definition of heuristics given by Polya, who says that heuristics is the study of methods and rules of discovery and invention, given by Polya in 1948. But maybe the most controversial term here is the term logic, obviously. And by logic, verso anche Carlo, means an open set of non-mechanical rules that guide the search for a solution of a problem. So it's a notion quite different from the notion of logic and mathematical logic, which is a closed set of mechanical rules that guarantee the solution of a problem when correctly applied. In the end, we have also to clarify what I mean by method. Obviously, in that case, method is bottom-up. So you need to start from the problem, the data, and then you, from this, you have to figure out how to generate some hypotheses to make sense of the data. And by method, we mean a rational procedure for generating an hypothesis to solve a problem that is a condition which is sufficient to imply the statement of the problem. Here we have a big difference with the notions of method in mathematical logic because the application of this method does not guarantee the solution of the problem. And a paramount example is the analytic method developed by Plato and then revised by others. In that method, obviously, the hypotheses must be plausible. They are nothing to do with true or false, but the main criteria is the plausibility. That means the compatibility with knowledge, the existing knowledge and the data we have. And above all, these hypotheses are provisional and local. The locality of these hypotheses can be argued for in a nice way using the so-called no-freelance theorems developed by Walter in 1996 and Walter and McGrady in 1997. And this argument has been put forward by Tom Nichols in a paper given in 2008. I won't give you all the details of the theorems, obviously, and these theorems undermine the very idea of a general problem solver because they say that there is always a cost to pay for the effectiveness of a method, we mean an algorithm, over a certain class of problem, and this cost is the loss of effectiveness over other classes of problems. More precisely, this theorem says that a method, in that case an algorithm for research optimization, becomes more and more effective as more and more domain-specific information is incorporated into it. So basically what we need to build the heuristic logic is a method plus imperative rules for the generation of hypotheses. And so the heuristic logic searches and studies these non-deductive rules. So now I can give you an outline, so a kernel, that was my title, of these heuristic rules. First of all, I would like to introduce a distinction between primitive and derivative rules, heuristic rules, I mean. So let's start obviously with the primitive heuristics. And basically, we can say that they are analogies or inductions of various kinds and their combinations. For instance, analogies within analogies. And there is a nice paper from Emiliano Ippoliti describing also this interplay of analogies. And we can define these heuristics primitive because all the heuristics we can use presuppose the primitive rules. And in essence, in a way they are trying to show, they can see as variance combination of juxtaposition of primitive heuristics. That's why, so the argument to support this idea is that investigating knowing something requires, first of all, finding similarity and dissimilarities between what we are investigating and object and conceptual system that we already have, so we need to build analogies. And second, to identify regularities within the data collected to interpret a given phenomenon. That means to find inductions. We can also produce a first taxonomy of these rules. You can see a list, and a more detailed list is contained in the last book of Carlo, Rethinking Logic. For instance, you can see obviously induction from single cases, induction from multiple cases, and analogy by quasi-equality, inductive analogy, proportional analogy, analogy of agreement and disagreement. And we can give a kind of taxonomy and also a formalization of these rules. So we can write down in a symbolic way. Obviously, I won't give you all the details on that point, but I will show you some of these rules. For instance, the first one on the left is induction from single case, and the second one is induction from multiple case. There is an error, sorry. This one is analogy from quasi-equality, and I say things about the way you can generate hypotheses. For instance, an analogy by quasi-equality says that if A and B are quasi-equal, and A has the property A in that case, then you can draw the conclusion that B also has the property A, which is obviously a leap in the dark, it's a jump in the darkness, but it's an empirical way of producing hypotheses. And these are a formalization, these are a formalization of these rules, and there also the last one is a metaphor. Somebody says that metaphor is not different from analogy. You can show that that's not true. You can see also from more detailed list of these rules, the book Carlo. And then from this set of primitive heuristics, you can try to move to the second level. I mean the derivative heuristics. And I will give you some examples. Obviously, I can give you a complete list because I thought that's an open set of rules. Here are some examples. For instance, conduct a thought experiment, or the analysis of stream cases, or changing the unit of analysis, changing the level of analysis, scenario planning, or, for instance, reframing the problem in terms of the opposite. These are example of derivative heuristics very often used in socials and also in physical science and sometimes also in mathematics and philosophy. You can have a more detailed list of these heuristics in that book, The Reconstruction of the Building, written by Jacques de Jacob in 2010. They provide a list of more than 20 example heuristics. I will try to give you an example of these heuristics. Let's start from the analysis of the stream cases. These heuristics tell us that in order to solve a problem, so to produce a hypothesis to solve a problem, you have to keep some of the variable constant and vary other two extreme values. This can give you useful information and give a situation. This heuristic is a form of specialization, that is the passage from the examination of a given set to the examination of a smaller one, which is contained as a subset of it. Obviously, when you use this kind of heuristics, you have to consider or pay attention to facts. The first one is that you must consider only the extremes that do not change the nature of the critical variable of the problem. And you must consider also that two variable variable does not affect other critical variables. So that doesn't change them. Here I will give you a toy example, provided again by Ippoliti in his book, Mathematics and Plausible Reasoning. And he says, two men are seated at the table of usual rectangular shape. One places a cent on the table, then the other does the same, and so on alternately. It is understood that each cent lies flat on the table and not on any cent previously placed. The player who puts the last coin on the table takes the money. Which player should win, provided that each plays the best possible game? The solution that I give you 3 seconds to think about possible solution. Maybe David knows that. And okay, that's a solution which employ the analysis of extreme cases. Suppose that the table is so small that it's covered by 1 cent. So think of an extreme case. Then obviously the first player wins. From this special case, you can reach the full solution when you imagine the table gradually extending to leave space to more and more cents. You also to take into consideration the fact that the table has a central symmetry. So if you put the cent on the central symmetry, and you have the first one, you are going to win. That's simple. Okay, so that was an example to show you a case of derivative heuristics. Now, the interesting part here, and maybe the most difficult part, is to show how we can reduce derivative rules to primitive rules. Okay, I will say that derivative heuristics can be reduced to primitive ones in the sense that they presuppose the latter. Okay, now I will give you just an example to illustrate how this reduction is possible. I will use the same example, so analyze of extreme cases. As you can maybe easily reconstruct, the use of extreme cases is the outcome of analogy and then of induction. So first of all, you proceed by focusing on a subject that, as such, has certain internal similarity to the original set. And then, from this subset, certain property useful for the solution of the problem are extracted. We are then extended to other cases up to a full generalization. So you try to make an induction. In the example of the center on the table, the first step is to focus on a case that is similar to the original one, from which you can get a first answer, very tentative answer to the problem. You then check by induction to see if it can be extended to all possible variations. So then you make an induction. As a second example, I will present you a well-known heuristics, the scenario planning. Is employed very heavily in military planning, sometimes also in finance. we can see that scenario planning is based on analogies and analogies and inductions. So to construct a plausible future, in that case we mean a scenario, a plausible future, we must use our knowledge about the past, so how events have evolved in circumstances similar to those that describe the current state of the world, and project a part of the past into the future. This process applies to each bifurcation of alternatives in the future. And these are then generated by means in part of induction and similarity with what has happened in the past, and in part by means of these analogies with what has happened in the past or is occurring in the present. For instance, one way to build a scenario is to assume the explicit violation of one of the forces, circumstances, or conditions that holds now. So we are employing an explicit disanalogy. I hope that it's clear that obviously it's more simple to use scenario planning rather than a description of all the inductions and analogies and disanalogies necessary to build a plausible future, a plot, so scenario. So a derivative heuristic is an agronomic way of generating new hypotheses, so they introduce a simplification. And now we show you how we can use in combination the heuristics. Obviously, we can use in combination primitive and derivative heuristics. The solution of problem, especially when complex, rarely requires the application of single heuristics, and instead requires to put in use a combination of different kinds of heuristics. And this combination may also turn out to be a chain of the very same heuristics, and multiple analogies. So the iteration of the same heuristics, let's say the analogy, can have different functions in the same line of thought. The main ones are integration, correction, alteration, refinement, and all this list that I will skip. And I will discuss just some of them. For instance, the first one is integration with a new analogy. It's when an aspect of an object or a domain that are not captured by a previous analogy are explored by an additional analogy. We have an example in this paper of Bernstein 1986, not very recent. We have, for instance, another function is the correction by a new analogy, when certain aspects of the source which may be misleading are correct without altering the correct information introduced by the previous analogies. Alteration, when a misleading aspect of a previous analogy can be adjusted by changing rather than by replacing it totally. So, for a discussion of all these properties, of these functions, you can see also this paper from Spiro, 1989, it's not using historical cases, it's using an illustrative example, didactic example. So, it gives you a quite interesting list of possible functions that an analogy can have inside the construction of a line of reasoning leading to a new hypothesis. Now, in that slide, I'm going to show you some example of analogies of the combination of these heuristics coming from different fields of science. The first ones come from psychology. We have a nice book written by a guy in 1968, where the author put in use metaphor and these two heuristics, metaphor, and reframe the problem in terms of its opposite to tackle the problem of persuasion. You can see the book of Jacob and Jacobi to see a full description of this attempt. Another nice example coming from physics is the Bernoulli generation of the notion of internal pressure in a fluid, which employs analogies, thought experiment, stream cases, and diagrams all together. And you can have a very nice description of this combination of heuristics in a paper written by Alain Valazia last year. And then there are a lot of examples also in mathematics. For instance, Euler's solution of Basel problem, also known as memory problem, which put in use a double analogy, so an analogy after analogy. And I've examined this kind of combination heuristics in two books written when I was younger. Okay, I will just before I'm almost finished. Before moving to the next section, I will just give you an example of the use of combination heuristics. And I've chosen maybe the more simple example of the three. I mean, the guy who tried to develop an approach to the problem of persuasion. And so he approaches this problem by examining not how to persuade someone, but first of all, by examining what makes someone resistant to a change of attitude, and thus reversing the focus of the problem. So he's reframing the problem in terms of the opposite. And then using biological, and in that case I mean immunological principles, to understand how we can induce resistance to form of communication that are designed to persuade something. And so he's using a metaphor. We can also produce another distinction for heuristics, and this distinction between the generative ones and the selective ones. The first one, the generative heuristics, is quite simple. It means that this heuristics allows us to generate new options, so new hypotheses, and in essence, these heuristics are the ones that we have already seen, induction and analogies and their combination refinements. While the other heuristics, which can be defined the selective heuristics, are the ones developed by the experimental psychology, so the heuristics and bias tradition by Kernel, and the fast and frugal tradition, developed by Gerenze and in USA mostly by Peter Todd. They are tools for choosing between given options. That's the main difference. So the options have to be already known. And so these selective heuristics are a rational procedure to select one of the existing options. And so they are inferential tools for decision making. They allow us to draw conclusions and that allows us to make a good decision. There are a lot of them: tit for tat, follow the crowd, imitate the successful, take the best, take the first. Probably you know them, and they come mostly from social sciences, as you can see. For instance, follow the crowd or follow the most optional choice tells you, okay, so choose the most selective option in your reference group. And tit for tat says that in a social environment, cooperate in the first round, and then in subsequent rounds, imitate your partner's actions or cooperation or defection in the previous round. The point is that obviously they do not provide new options. They do not provide, sorry for the typo, new options, and in this sense they are not empathy, strictly speaking. And also Peter Todd agrees with this. So, he's quite sure that we can say that selective heuristics are not empirical. One last point before my final remarks is that the fast and fugal tradition is interesting because it gives you a tool that is better than optimization. So if you use these heuristics to take a decision, you can perform even better than using EUT, the expected utility theory. So using one of these heuristics under certain and identifiable circumstances allows us to make inference and take decision in a better way than using probability theory, where applicable. So in this sense, and that's the main point of the fast and fugal tradition, they are not simply shortcuts, but a better path in the selection of hypotheses, which lead to a better hypothesis. So now I am approaching the last section of my talk. Heuristic rules are ways of modeling the problem space. That's a technical term coming from Simon, as maybe a lot of you can recall. But you have a problem here. Since you can combine ideas and concepts in many ways, and due to the underdetermination, the hypothesis, the problem space can grow in a combinatorial explosion. And so, heuristics seems a tool to deal with this explosion. In particular, Simon, in his famous book, 1987, argues that heuristics is a tool to mitigate this explosion. That is, to compress, to reduce the problem space. As a matter of fact, the heuristics is a way to create and build such a space. First of all, we can note that the problem space depends heavily on the existing knowledge and available data. So a problem space is a temporary object which changes over time, so in this sense it's positional, as data and existing knowledge change. And second, a heuristic can reduce as well as expand that space. In a sense, heuristics must also expand a problem space in order to facilitate the search for a new hypothesis. So putting together, for instance, pieces of knowledge coming from different fields of our scientific knowledge. So the research area of solution of a problem is dynamic. And in a sense, the problem space does not precede or forego the conclusion. In that sense, we can say that the heuristics is not simply a way of mitigating the explosion of the problem space. Finally, Simon points out that problem solving implies both solving problem, it means find a solution, and find a new problem. So, strictly speaking, problem finding. He also says that the procedure, or suggests the procedure for the discovery of a new law can also be a means to discover new problems, new observational instruments, or new representatives, which is new discoveries. The heuristic rules that I show you are a way both to solve and pose problems. Think, for instance, of analogy is also a means to generate new problems, so to find new problems. And this suggests that finding and solving problems can be approached by means of a unifying perspective, but that's an hypothesis, obviously. Of course, there is still a lot of work to do, but using the old adagio of Bacon, ars invenienti adolescit convensis. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments? Yes, please.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I sort of haven't followed this since the 1980s and 90s when I was studying and building some heuristic programs in artificial intelligence. And so I noticed some of the things you were citing, like Simon's work and Bernstein's were in that tradition. But some of the rules that you were proposing, I really couldn't see how to easily implement them. So I wondered, is your goal is really to tell this to humans, right?
Yeah.
And not to provide a set of rules that can easily be programmed. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well discussed. Thank you for the question.
An obvious one, I guess, maybe for those of us that remember back in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, Carlo can also answer better than me, but maybe also Donald. But I would say that yes. This set of heuristic rules are meant to be used by humans. Maybe. Okay, let's go back to Simon. The idea of mechanization of an algorithm of discovery it's quite questionable.
Well, the word algorithm is used in two ways. I had this on my door at Stanford in the heuristic programming project at the time because I was confused about it. But it could be a procedure that guarantees a correct solution, or it can just be a procedure that's programmable but is actually a heuristic and doesn't guarantee a correct solution. So when you use the word algorithm, which did you just mean?
Only the second one.
Okay.
Yeah, because
so it could be programmed, but we don't know what.
Yeah, the problem with the programming is that what we can program, what we can put into a code.
Right.
Because okay, let's take for example Bacon. So
right.
Bacon is a very clear example of the fact that machines are useful not only, maybe in the last step of the discovery, when all the process of conceptualization have been developed by humans, because Bacon's software is a family of software.
And did you know Doug Linnett's work with discoveries in mathematics? He used extremes to find something new he didn't know about, but that Rasmussen had found before about maximally divisible numbers. So some of them were less recreative of old discoveries than Bacon was. So if that's your point, there were other examples where that wasn't so true.
Yeah. I agree. Maybe you can use it. You can use some of these heuristics in a computer, but they still need the human too, because you have to show the humans have to choose some variables, for instance, and it's difficult to see how can a computer make all this work without a human. Okay, a computer can mine a huge amount of data.
Well, that's the new ways of doing discovery with
big databases. I mean, you're searching for correlations, basically.
You're searching for
correlations.
Patterns,
Yeah.
Often correlations.
Basically, correlations, and you hope that some of these correlations can become code. But
so you think at this point, knowledge representation in computers is too limited to do many of the things you want to talk about, and so it has to be a human brain.
Yeah, I think so. But I would be wrong. I mean.
Yeah, thank you very much for the talk. I have, I guess, more than questions, like comments or remarks. So you started with the analogy and discussions about kind of rules for analogical reasoning that may be employed for scientific discovery, if I understood it. And so the kind of first comment I had is, I don't know whether you look at some of the literature in philosophy of science that kind of goes back to Mirafiori in the 1960s on that's right. More recently, there hasn't been a huge amount of work on analogies. analogies, but I don't know, Alison Wiley has been talking about analogies in archaeology, for example.
Yeah,
So I don't know
used by Cameron Shelley in that book, Multiple Analogies in Science and Philosophy.
Yeah, so I don't know whether you want, I don't know, you want to make the link or not, because clearly you were coming from a certain kind of logical traditions when you're talking about analogies, and I was kind of thinking about how that might impinge on these other debates in kind of process science. The other question I had was about the second part of the talk, where you discuss Gigerenzer, their frugal method and so forth, because I always thought that program was really a program about rational choice and not something about heuristic in a sense of how do we come to new hypotheses or how we discover things. It's more how do we assess whether human behavior is rational in some circumstances. So I've never thought of that sort of literature as a literature that was kind of speaking to the topic of, but
Yeah.
So,
No, it's a quite...
Just a clarification about how you see that to feed into what you want to say on heuristics.
Yeah, I had the problem because they use the term heuristics.
That's right, they use the same terminology, but it seems that the kind of inquiry and the business that they're doing is to me has always looked like quite different from a heuristic in a sense of scientific discovery. They're really interested in understanding what makes some human behavior rational, even if sometimes we violate rules of logic and rules of probability, but it's still rational in the sense that it's an adaptive response to. So it seems that the kind of it's called heuristics. But
you're right. It's a tool for choosing, evaluating alternatives. Yeah. And, last November, maybe David was there. I had a brief talk with Peter Todd, and he was wondering about this fact: if the fast and fluid heuristic could be used also in other domains, like mathematics, for instance. It's not easy to say because maybe let's take, for instance, take the best and take the first. Maybe some mathematicians could use these heuristics under certain circumstances. And I don't know, maybe, okay, if this is the first hypothesis that comes out from my research, okay, take this and go on. Maybe it could be a way of validating that hypothesis without inquiring other area of the problem space. And so maybe they could use as a means or tools to proceed in certain direction of the research for an hypothesis or a
So
solution.
it's the idea that really we should look at the process of heuristics and scientific discovery in a kind of naturalistic way, like look at what psychology tells us, look at what those people working on the rational decision theory are telling us in the course of their experiments, and that could provide different ways of thinking about scientific discovery. That is not about, logical recipes or algorithms, but it's about the way the human about the human brain function. Sometimes can violate laws of
and they say that they're rational. They say that they are, under certain circumstances, take the best is better than using probability theory because the environment, or some aspect of the environment are such that it's better to use the heuristics than expectancy theory. So maybe they could also be used as a way of reinforcing or choosing when you have more hypotheses on the table. Maybe this kind of heuristics can help you in choosing one of them. Also, as a mathematician, I don't know, maybe they could help you in the selection of more than one hypothesis. Maybe they could put you in that way. Thank you for the question.
Well, thank you for a nice service of the different perspectives.
Thank you.
I think there is not enough, though, to role of metaphysics, of the human condition when approaching knowledge. I spent 3 months in a beautiful place, mostly for having juries from all over the world in France, in Nantes, I started a program, which is on my webpage, the notion of law for humans, for gods, and for nature. This was coming from discussion with jurists from China and India and historians. They really have a very different perspective. The Chinese judge of the Taoist tradition is not going to apply a rule or a law. He goes in a community, he has to understand the equilibrium. He understand how in the community people get together, have an harmonious situation. The criminal isn't one who breaks the equilibrium. It may be very conservative, but it's very beautiful, very much embedded in their way of understanding the universe, because the organisms are a matter of equilibrium hanging together, and even the solar system. For organisms, it's fantastic. Indeed, they invented acupuncture. In the 10th century, they had vaccination. In the 10th century, just by working with organisms and trying and so on, a fantastic medicine. They say the vision of the solar system as an organism is not very convincing. But it is this very different metaphysical perspective from ours. In India, as an further issue, there's a lot of discussion about infinity, but without infinity going to mathematics. How does infinity goes into mathematics? Actual infinity, beyond the Greek use of potential infinity. It goes because of the presence of God in paintings. I mean, there is a beautiful account of this. The presence of God of painting is the perspective, which is not derived from an Arabic optic. It's not a matter of cumulative knowledge. It's the relevance of God in nature, which is at the core of the Italian Renaissance. In actual infinities there in the painting. This is kind of given an account in whatever terms that doesn't take into account the human role in the universe. And so what Simon says, that by computer from data you could derive the Copernican perspective, that's absolutely absurd. I mean, people were burned on stakes because of that, because it was a deep metaphysical issue. You cannot go beyond that. This should be taken into account. As for the recent stuff about data mining, fortunately mathematics saves from this idiotic stuff of claiming from regularities we can act and predict. Hayden, former president of CIA, declared we kill on the grounds of metadata. You called enough time Bin Laden, we kill you, that's all. But data mining is telling us this. If you have enough regularities, you act and predict without understanding. Computers tell you how to do it. Fortunately, mathematics say this doesn't work. Yeah. I have a little paper where I show using Ramsey theorem. Whatever regularity you fix, you may have 3 or more parameters telling what's a regularity among numbers. There is a large enough number so that any set of that cardinality contains the regularity. So your set of numbers may be totally random. Those people who claim to use algorithms to deduce don't know the theory of algorithms, of which Ramsey is part. They don't know it by principle, because they claim we need no theory. But the theory of algorithms gives the negative results that randomness in large numbers pops out all the time. You can prove that. So there's no way from irregularity to not only to derive a theory, but to derive action and prediction. You need an interpretation, which requires perspective, which is a metaphysical.
I agree. But yeah, I didn't touch the point of metaphysics because it's a big point, and maybe we will think of metaphysics as an heuristic tool. I don't know. Maybe.
But surely not data mining.
No. Okay, I'm with you. I mean, I've seen a lot of data coming from, for instance, from stock markets, and they try to make, they do this mistake.
The number of marriages in Kentucky is the same as the number of drowned people in American coast.
Yeah.
And the age of Miss America for 20 years has been the same number as the thousands of tomatoes produced in Delaware.
Yeah, you can find any kind of correlation. Yeah. But yeah, the point is that maybe metaphysics is could be an heuristic. So there are suggestions, maybe Lakatos tell this, that you can use metaphysics as an heuristic tool. So there could be maybe a way of thinking of metaphysics in connection with heuristics reasoning. I haven't done yet, but maybe I will do. Okay.
Yes.
can't resist saying, maybe over a drink at dinner, I can try to convince you that there's dumb machine learning and there's very good machine learning. And some of it's very good and done right and interpreted correctly. There are good things you can get out of it. But but about your talk, my question was about one of the things that it seemed to me was a little bit absent. But this may be your response to Lindley explains part of why. Is there wasn't any discussion really of control mechanism.
Yeah.
So there's all these rules, but of course the combinatorial explosion is going to just kill you if you try to actually use these. So I'm curious. Is your view that the human has a necessary role as the sort of selection of let's try this analogy and let's try that analogy? And complementary to that, how do you see the role of the goals of the scientist as part of the control mechanism? I'm thinking here about a lot of the work on automated theorem proving, where one of the big moves has been to say you conjecture what the theorem might be, and all of a sudden the theorem prover is much, much better because it has a target to aim towards rather than just sort of letting it wander through the forest blindly. Even if you just are doing random conjectures, you get massive speed up because now it's got something to aim for. Even if it then shows that that's false, you're able to get some speed ups. So I'm just curious, sort of these issues of control and selection of all these different heuristics, which are wonderful. How does anyone, a machine, a human, select?
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the question, David.
The 5 different questions that I smushed together there, sorry.
So I'll try to extract the one that I respond, I can answer better without losing my dignity. Okay, well, okay, let's see. Okay, goals. You were talking about goals. Okay. Yes, maybe the heuristics are, these kind of rules are tools for setting goals, in a sense. So in that way, they provide you a shortcut to a clear target, and then maybe you don't have at the beginning. So.
Oh, so heuristics as a method of goal discovery.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Thinking about it the other way around, that the goals would say, this is a plausible heuristic that might get you to something like that, so use this one. That's an interesting idea.
So, it should...
Well, but, I mean, automatic, there is a lot of proof assistance, proof checking perhaps, not that. But automatic proof theory doesn't exist. I mean, 50 years, it's not a new theorem, automatic proof. Proof assistance is fantastic. They are human decide whether a certain lemma can be proved or not. And it does it by, well, the intuition of meaning, because it is proved that the decidability of a lemma is undecidable. So in no way a machine can detect the decidability.
The decidability of an arbitrary lemma is undecidable.
Right.
The decidability of particular lemmas may quite frequently be decided.
Right, but no machine ever proved in 50 years a new theorem.
I would be happy to talk with you afterwards because that's no longer true. I mean, there's a lot of people at Carnegie Mellon who work on exactly these things.
Proof assistance is quite fantastic, I know, but automatic theorem from a set of axioms is not true.
And but I see your point. It more or less the same question comes from a viewpoint that we share also in Arduino. I mean, I see the point.
Just trying to think about how the pieces come together here. It's interesting.
Maybe they could combine also. So algorithms and heuristics can be combined and maybe provide a better way of discovering something new. So the problem is when you have to use algorithms and when you have to use the heuristics, and when you need nuance, when you need only machines or a combination of the two. Maybe, but that's a very big question, maybe a big issue. So, thank you. I hope that I answered your part of your question. Okay, maybe it's. Okay.
This is just a quick question. I think it might be the same question David asked in a different way. How do you determine the kinds of heuristics to use? I mean, is there a literature on, matching up problem solving with particular types of heuristics, or, so for example, like the case I was talking about this morning, where you're, trying to figure out where to go next at the LHC. And so how would a heuristic, or what kind of heuristic in the mix that you discussed there, how could you employ one of those in an attempt to try to figure out what the best way might be for constructing a new model or an extension to the models we already have? I mean, I know that's a huge question, but is there a way that is usually for mapping on heuristics to particular types of problems, or?
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, I think that they are in a sense general, but they need also domain-specific information in order to be implemented and to be put forward. So,
because then there's
for instance, some of them are not. So now I'm also looking at the data and the theories that try to interpret the behavior of stock markets.
Yeah, because that's a case where there's lots of analogies. But it's not clear that the analogies have any content in them. It's just completely mathematical frameworks for bringing from one area into another, because it happens that you've got lots and lots of data in one area. That sort of corresponds to
maybe also that's the problem of historical processes or historical dynamics, because you can see the same pattern, for instance, data coming from markets in 1950s, and it's the same in the 1990s, but the background is so different, the law are so different, the institution behave so differently that it's hard to see if there is a real correlation at all. So you have to make a prediction, what comes next, and you don't know, because the forces acting behind this pattern is quite different. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I think there's probably, it's just a question that...
That's why we need humans.
Yeah.
Suppose in identical context, I mean, a coding theory, cat lemma, tells you that recurrence requires almost infinite time. Even identical to nested context, if it is just non-linear. Recurrence doesn't apply. I mean, there are theorems about that.
Thank you, Lucian, for your help. Okay, now it's time
More
for...
questions? No? May I ask you a short question?
Okay.
You mentioned that the only derivative heuristics you mentioned are combinations of induction and analogy. Are there in the literature other heuristics, there are combinations of other primitive heuristics, not only induction and analogy, something else? I mean, do you find in the literature anything like that?
Not other.
No, okay.
But if I find something,
No, of
I'll
course,
tell you.
of course, it was just a question. Okay, so I think.
Don't have time.
Next speaker,